Tired of quick fixes leaving you feeling worse? What if healing means tuning into your gut literally? It's time for a candid talk about microbiomes, fiber, and why what you eat may be making you sick or strong. Coming up on The Long Haul with Summer. Welcome to The Long Haul with Summer, where we're talking about real stories, real solutions, non-traditional healthcare options, and challenging traditional medicine. Today, I am very excited to have Miss Jenn Devilleneuve in the studio today to talk to us about just that. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenn and welcome her into the studio. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited. So if you would start by telling us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got here today.
Yeah. So I am a family nurse practitioner, and for probably close to 20 years practiced in a traditional setting. But I have ended up in functional medicine, probably like most of us because of our own stories. So I had my second child and he started having a lot of allergy type symptoms, eczema. He was not growing and gaining weight. We saw an allergist. We exhausted that traditional medicine route and still were not really getting answers. So really more as a mom than as a provider, I felt desperate to help my own child and felt like we just weren't asking some of the questions of like, is this related that his allergies, every time we test him, he is testing positive for more and more foods that he cannot have. And he's not gaining weight. And he looked malnourished with just a real bloated tummy. And so all of these things, and the answer was steroids or immunosuppressants. And I felt like we were never really getting to answer the questions of why is this going on?
Right.
So I started doing a ton of research on my own, just desperate to help him. And really out of that desperation, I was open to other integrative and alternative approaches that I probably would not have been open to otherwise. And it was after hours of research that I finally came upon the gut connection with gut-skin connection and how permeability or leaky gut can lead to immune dysfunction and even allergies. And it just made sense. I remember telling my husband, I think that I am on to what might be going on with him. And so we really started incorporating nutrition into what we were doing and making changes there and trying to heal his gut. And it was like for the first time in over a year, he gained weight. And so I started seeing these little steps in the right direction. And so it was really through that I became open to even another approach outside of traditional medicine. Since then, so I have 5 kids. 3 of my kids have had chronic things going on. And so just through those things, I have ended up, we've gone the traditional route and kind of hit a roadblock. And so it's made me research other ways and avenues that might be helpful for them. And with each of them, it's been a more integrative approach that has been helpful. And so that is what has made me passionate about what I'm doing. We've had to travel out of state at different times for care for them. And I always wish there was somebody locally that was kind of looking at root causes for children and trying to figure out and just dig deeper than just putting a Band-Aid on symptoms. So that's really, it's been a journey for many years, but that's how I ended up in what I'm doing now.
That's amazing. I've talked to many people here and in my own practice that is how their journey started.
Yeah.
It was either themselves, their family, a child, a friend. And I know for myself the same thing. I mean, that is kind of what drives you to look. And you do go down, I think, that normal pathway because that's all you know.
Right.
And then nothing changes. And so you start looking for something else.
Yeah.
And then kind of here you are. And I just want to thank you, one, for stepping outside the box, right? Yeah. And you, I know, have made a difference in a lot of people's lives, including my own child. I know that her, her whole entire system and her overall health has definitely changed since, seeing you and doing all the things, investigating all the things, and kind of building her up from the inside out.
Yeah,
So,
it makes such a difference.
oh yeah,
It does.
It is such a game changer, and so I'm just thankful to have found that collaboration.
Yes.
So you work with a lot of patients who have complex chronic things, and a lot of them have also been down that trajectory. I feel like by the time patients get to you or to me, they're like, I mean, they've done it all.
They've tried all
They've done it
sorts of
all.
things.
They've had all sorts of testing. So what do you do when they get to you and they say, all my things have been tested and everything is fine, and they tell me I'm fine, but I don't feel good? Where do you even start with that?
So I really start with an in-depth history and physical, and really trying to put pieces together. So even if I'm seeing an adult and starting in childhood and what their childhood health history was like, and putting pieces, it's like pieces of a puzzle, and trying to figure out what could be going on. A lot of times there is testing that maybe has not been done, that's helpful to look into. A lot of times we look at diet also. So we're looking at diet, we're looking at symptoms, testing that has been done, maybe testing that has not been done. And so really doing that in-depth history and spending a lot of time on that initial appointment, I think, is really important, because when you're able to spend an hour to an hour and a half with somebody, you really are able to get the information to put pieces together that maybe if they've been in another appointment previously that was 15 or 30 minutes, maybe that was not adequate time to really figure out what the pieces of the puzzle were. And there's a lot of testing that if they've gone the traditional route, that probably has not been considered, that could be helpful. And so we really talk about that as well. But I do traditional lab work and blood work. And a lot of times the things that I am looking at are more optimal levels as opposed to just what is considered normal. So that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you talk about history and physical, because I talked to Carrie, and she also does a very detailed history and physical, and I feel like in traditional medicine, we've moved really far away from that. I feel like sometimes when I go, as a patient, it's sort of like Chick-fil-A drive-through. Stop here, get your lab. Stop here, let me talk to you for 5 minutes, then move on through, and here's your pill at the end, and then we're kind of done. But I do find that if you can really invest the time and talk and listen to a patient, like you're saying, and do a detailed physical exam, I mean, you can really get to a root cause.
You can. And there's a lot of things, I think, in the physical exam that are easy to overlook sometimes that maybe another doctor hasn't paid attention to. So I think about, like, if you have spots in your nail beds, that could be a sign of zinc deficiency. Looking at the tongue. So like if you have a white coating, that could be a sign of candida or yeast or fungal. If it's real red and rigid, it could be vitamin B issues. So there's lots of clues that I think are there if you take time to look.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It
and
is.
Oftentimes, I think, one, we don't have time, or we don't take the time. But if you do, then, you can sometimes uncover some things. And I think what we really want to do is get to the root cause, right? And not just, symptom treatment, which is what I feel like we do a lot of times in traditional medicine.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you get to the root cause is when you actually have healing.
For sure.
But it definitely is something that takes a lot longer, and is not as fast. And so that can be a hard thing too, because you want to feel better quickly. And when you're doing root cause, it often takes time. So,
yeah. I mean, I'm sure that can be frustrating, especially for people who have already been kind of through all the traditional medicine, pathways, and they're looking to feel better. Although I will say, I find that they're pretty motivated by the time they get to me. Whatever you say, I'll do it.
I am desperate. Yes. I'll do whatever it takes.
Yes, whatever it takes. So I know in having conversations with you as Millie's provider, I mean, we're talking about a lot of things, right? We're talking about not just medications and supplements, but lifestyle changes.
Right.
And one of the things we want to talk about today is inflammation, because I think, a lot of that is what drives long COVID. A lot of that drives, chronic disease, and a lot of the issues you're talking about. So lifestyle, I mean, that's huge. I mean, where do you even start with a patient when we're talking about lifestyle changes?
Yeah. So first, I do start with inflammation.
Okay.
And I really love an illustration that Dr. Sheila Kilbane uses. So she uses a picture of a cup that's filled to the top. And she likens that to our body and says, this is your body functioning with inflammation that's just kind of chronically there and underlying. And so thinking about, what things are causing inflammation. So your genetics adds to that. Your diet is a huge factor in that. Environmental allergens, environmental toxins, and then life stressors and sleep. And so what can we do to lower inflammation? Because if you think of a cup that's filled to the brim, and you put a rock in a cup that's filled to the brim, what's going to happen? It's going to overflow.
Right.
It can't contain everything that's there. And that's kind of what happens with our bodies. When we are operating at a level where we're chronically inflamed, any insult, so it might be a virus, it might be stress, it might be increased physical activity, whatever that is, our bodies cannot be resilient and cannot control the inflammation at some point. And so it overflows, and it looks different for each person. But a lot of times the underlying cause is still inflammation that's there at a long-standing level. So I really show people that chart and say, if we can get your overall inflammation down in that cup to halfway full, then what happens when we add a rock to it? It doesn't overflow.
Right.
And so if we are able to work on all of these areas to lower overall inflammation, it can actually make a big difference. So you might make changes in your diet. You might try to start changing the way that, like, what you put on your body, chemicals that you're exposed to. If allergies are an issue for you, maybe you start using an air purifier or allergen pillowcase and mattress cover. And those seem like really little things that wouldn't make a difference. But when you're doing multiple of those things, then it really does make a difference because it is lowering overall inflammation. And so I think when people start making some of those changes and they start seeing benefit, then they realize what an impact it is having.
Yeah.
So,
And then they want more.
yeah. And then they're willing to do more. And I tell people, you don't have to go all the way to the extreme at the beginning. If you're able, I always say diet is a huge thing, probably the biggest contributor to our inflammation that we can control. And so if you can start making changes in your diet, that's a great place to start. And if you want to start making changes in chemicals that you're exposed to, start with what you put on your body and leave on your body. So like lotions and makeup for women, and just start making those small changes, and it kind of progresses and gets easier to continue to do.
Yeah, I know it's definitely a learning process. I've learned from you, and even looking through your Full Script account and starting to look at labels. I mean, it is very overwhelming. I mean, and to try to tell a patient to do that it's overwhelming, and it's expensive. And you've been doing the same routine for so long, with products you thought you trusted, food that you thought was good. And all of a sudden you're throwing everything away and starting over.
Yeah. And I tell people a lot of times, for a lot of people, so not everybody, some people do need to eliminate completely certain foods. But for the majority of my patients, if they are able to make changes 80% of the time, like in what they're eating, then that can make a big difference. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And you can start, there's different ways to start. So maybe you're going to start and focus on breakfast and really make that a more healthy option. And that can be your focus for the first month.
Right.
And then you can move to something else. I think really making it doable for yourself is really going to set yourself up for more long-term success in that. If you go home and you think you need to throw away everything in your pantry, that's extremely expensive and overwhelming to know even where to begin. So I think you can start with little baby steps and make your way, and, you'll become more healthy along the way. So I think it's been a 15-year journey for me and my family, and it has not happened overnight,
Right.
the way that we eat. And it's been little changes along the way. So yeah.
So you've mentioned diet multiple times. And when I say the word diet to a patient, they automatically think cutting calories, starving themselves.
Yeah.
That's not it, right?
No.
Following a prescribed or certain diet is different. It's a lifestyle change. We're not dieting to lose weight.
Right.
This is something we're talking about that's for, longevity, right? And to decrease that inflammation. So let's talk about what that looks like.
Yeah.
If we have patients with inflammation and diet is one of the things we're discussing, what does that look like? An anti-inflammatory type diet?
Yeah. And so that's really where I start with almost all my patients. So before we do testing, while we're waiting for results to come back, really the first thing that I tell people to implement is just a more anti-inflammatory type diet.
Mhm.
And so I kind of think of three things with that. One, the very first thing is lowering sugar intake.
Mhm.
I think that's a huge thing that we do not realize how much sugar we are getting in our diet. So if you drink any sugary beverages, that's a huge hidden source of sugars. I want to say we should have like about 20 grams of added sugar a day for adults. Kids should be even less.
Oh, wow.
Kids under 2 should not have any added sugar. And so if you're doing any juices or soft drinks, you're getting more sugar than really what you should have all day in one serving.
That's crazy.
It is. I mean, one Sprite, I think, has 40 grams of sugar. So it's double what we should have in a day. So really, like, if you're doing any sugary beverages, Starbucks drinks are a huge thing too. Cutting those out or limiting those is a great first step.
Okay.
If you're not doing sugary beverages, just starting to read labels and look at added sugar. So not total sugar, but added sugar. And just start noticing. It'll change the way that you buy things. So yogurt, for instance, is something that we give our kids a lot that is considered healthy. But if you look at like Yoplait yogurt and those Go-Gurts, or I mean, even sometimes the things that we consider healthy with yogurts, and you look at added sugar, some of them have a tremendous amount of added sugar. And there are other options. So you can get like a plain Greek yogurt and add some maple syrup and not have that added sugar or add fruit. So yeah, first thing would be looking at added sugars and really trying to start limiting those. Second thing that I tell people is looking at fiber and really trying to increase fiber. So most of us do not get enough fiber in our diets. And fiber is really important for a lot of reasons. So one, it helps with regular bowel movements, which is so important in gut health because that's really the primary way our body is getting rid of toxins. And so if you're not having a bowel movement every day, you're harboring toxins in your body, which is causing increased inflammation. So fiber is really important for that. But the other thing that fiber is really important for is feeding the good bacteria in our gut. So we hear a lot, people talk about prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. So the prebiotics, really, if you were to take a prebiotic, you're just feeding the good bacteria in your gut. It's food to feed the good bacteria. And really all it is fiber. So you can get that from your diet without having to take the supplement. And that's what the good bacteria needs in our gut to be able to proliferate and have that healthy microbiome. So increasing fiber in your diet is just a really easy way to do that. And I specifically tell people increase polyphenols, which is all the colors of the rainbow. Think about colors of the rainbow. So if you can get, red pepper or raspberries and just kind of go through the colors and make sure you're getting a variety of colors from fruits or vegetables in your diet, that's a great way to do that. And then the other thing along with anti-inflammatory is really trying to eliminate more of the processed foods that often have preservatives and fillers and things that you're being exposed to, just different chemicals and dyes that are not good. So there's a lot of options, and I know you've learned this too. But there are some really great healthy options out there when you need, as a mom, or if you're just living a busy lifestyle and you need some things that are grab and go that you can have on hand. There's great options out there. So it's just really starting to read labels and see what foods contain. And I tend to find like the less ingredients, the better.
Yes.
So even like potato chips, if you can find potato chips that are organic potatoes and avocado oil,
that's it. Yeah.
And salt, like that's all you need.
Right.
So yeah, just starting to read labels. And so that's really in that first month that after a patient comes to see me, those are kind of the foundational changes that we start to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge undertaking, I will say, to completely change your lifestyle. But I mean, those are 3 things you can really grab onto pretty easily and pretty quickly. Reading labels is hard too, because a lot of my patients and I talk about gluten and inflammatory seed oils and things. And if you look at gluten-free products, for example, they say gluten-free, so people will just grab them. But if you turn them around and look at the ingredients, there's seed oils and all these horrible things that are actually worse for inflammation.
Just as inflammatory. Yes.
So you're stacking up all these things while eliminating the gluten, so that is not helpful.
Right.
This is kind of along those same lines, but as a family, I mean, you have 5 children. I mean, where in the world do you eat? So do you eat at home? Do you cook at home? Where do you, I mean,
I would say we mainly eat at home.
Yeah.
We do go out. And because of, I have one child that can't do gluten and I have one that can't do dairy. So that definitely, changes where we go out and what we have to take that into consideration.
Right.
But I would say the majority of our meals are probably at home.
Yeah.
There have been times when like we've had to be on a more restrictive diet. And so when we've traveled, we've like brought food with us and packed food. And that's really hard. It's not easy. So we're not having to be as strict as we were at one time now, which is nice. So we can have some variability. And I feel like there are a lot of restaurant options now that do serve gluten-free. And while it may not be healthy, it's still, if we're eating a lower inflammatory way the majority of the time, then having increased inflammatory foods at certain times is okay for most people. Because your body is able to be more resilient because it's not having that all the time.
Right.
But it is interesting when you eat a more inflammatory way and then you have something that, is kind of outside of what you normally eat. And my kids sometimes will notice a difference in how they feel.
Yes.
And I'm like, I wonder if that's because of what we ate last night, helping them connect those dots.
Yes.
So yeah, it is. It's a journey and it's not easy, but when you start feeling better, then you start wanting to continue eating that way. And it's great motivation.
Yes, I will have to agree with you completely. I mean, when I first started doing gluten-free and swapped Millie to that, I mean, number one, it's hard to do that, right? Especially I go eat lunch with her sometimes at school and I look at what they're serving in the cafeteria and it gives me chest pain just looking at what we're feeding our kids. We started packing her lunch and all those things. But once we eliminated all those things from our diet, the processed foods, the gluten and all that, if we did choose to eat something with that in it, all of a sudden, I don't feel good. I have a rash, her tummy hurts. And that's a hard lesson for her to learn and for me to have to learn too. I mean, it's not worth it, especially when you feel good
being off of it.
Yes.
Yeah, we had the same. My daughter, we eliminated gluten for her. And during the 1 or 2 months that we eliminated, she would say, I can't tell any difference. I don't feel any better. And we stayed on it for, 1 to 2 months. And then we decided to let her have some. And it wasn't until she added it back that she felt horrible. And it triggered just the same symptoms she was having before, stomach ache, fever. And it was a very obvious direct correlation. And now she does not want gluten because she feels so bad when she has it that she does not want, it's not worth it.
Yeah. I've been down that same path with myself and my child and with patients. And I'll say, just try it for a couple of, if you will just do it for a couple of weeks, then let me know how you feel. I mean, not one single person has said, oh, I feel terrible after cleaning up my diet. I mean, they all get some improvement from it, just as simple. Honestly, I mean, with people being so sick, I mean, and seeing people, chronically sick, it gives them a little sense of control back over the situation for me
Yeah.
to talk to them about that and say, what's the one thing you can control today? It is what you put in your mouth, and what you're fueling your body with.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. So we deal with this as a family too. I feel like I'm the outlier, right? When we go in public or we're in a restaurant or all the kids are at a sporting event and everybody's giving out red Gatorade and Cheez-Its afterwards for a snack.
Yeah.
And I'm swapping it out for like water and some gluten-free, something for my kid. And I feel like the crazy person, people I feel like judge me over that. My child feels left out. I mean, how do you deal with that? Or how do you, what do you tell patients about that sort of situation?
Yeah, I have felt that exact same way. And it's hard because you're like, am I the crazy one? But then you're like, no, I'm not. Like, this really is, it's almost like poison to their bodies. It makes them feel sick. They're having a reaction. If I were to give it to them, it would be crazy.
Yes.
Knowing that it causes this. And I'm in the same situation as you. So my daughter, who does have to eat anti-inflammatory and can't do gluten, I have sent snacks with her to school for her teacher to keep on hand. So if somebody has a birthday, she gets one of those treats.
Yes.
And that can be hard. And I also think it can be character building for our kids to start to experience, like, they're not always going to fit in life, and to start to experience like that's okay.
Right.
And I try to make it as easy as I can for her by sending other treats and by, at Halloween, I let them have some candy, but then they traded in the rest of their candy for a Amazon gift card. So trying to figure out, okay, how can we make this doable? And it's not too hard on them, yet it would be crazy for me to let her have gluten, knowing that I know how bad it makes her feel.
Right.
And so, just having a lot of conversations around that. If you're with your child and that's the one who's having to eat in a different way, I think they really understand more than what we realize.
Yes.
And so having those conversations can be really helpful. But I even, through some of those conversations with my family, I've looked back and thought 30 or 40 years ago, everybody smoked, or maybe 50 years ago, and nobody thought anything of it. They smoked in houses and cars. And now we look at that and we're like, that's crazy.
Right.
Why? I couldn't believe that somebody would smoke inside their house with all their kids. I think we're going to look back on what we're putting in our bodies and think that's crazy we did that. And I hope that, and I think people are starting to realize that needs to change. Like, the crazy thing is to continue to feed your body with things that make it sick.
Yes.
But it's really hard when you're going against culture, and that's really what is done,
Yes, it's definitely hard, and we're dealing with that. Millie is 8, and so there's a lot of discussion, at the lunch table and after sports games. But I've always been very transparent with her about it. It has been hard, but I think they are more adaptable than you think they are. Yeah. And she has started to recognize that and I've let her, everyone's eating a donut. She wants a donut. She's crying. She doesn't want to be left out. That's fine. You're making that decision. You're not going to feel good. And when she has a tummy ache, we have that conversation. Remember, we talked about this, but I agree with you. I hope that it's changing. I hope that the environment is changing and you're not seen as the crazy person. I hope it will become more the norm. And I do hear more conversation surrounding it now. We're talking about make America healthy again. People are at least having those conversations openly. Yeah. I hate that it's a politically charged thing because it is not.
It's really our health.
Yes.
That's really what it's about.
Yes.
And I do think even with that awareness, there's becoming a lot more options of things that, so we can have more options to feed our kids certain things that are more healthy than there, might have been 10 or 15 years ago even. Right. So, yeah.
No, it's definitely gotten easier. The more conversation I hear about it, the more excited I get that maybe I'm not the crazy person.
Yeah.
Well, shifting gears a little bit. So we're talking about inflammation and you talked about testing and all those things. But, I think histamine and histamine release and, intolerance to histamine, I mean, that drives a lot of inflammation. What are things you look for? Because we have laboratory testing, right? And a lot of people have already had that done, the traditional lab testing. What are things you look for beyond that give you clues that histamine is a problem and inflammation is a problem?
Yeah. So, I mean, and it can look different. I mean, I know you've experienced that with your patients.
Yeah.
It really can present different in different people. So anything that is inflammatory, I think, can be fueled by histamine intolerance or mast cell activation. And so whether that's joint pain, whether it's exacerbation of like asthma symptoms or eczema or even gut issues, all of those things can have a histamine component that's kind of fueling the inflammation there. And so I will, depending on what is going on, there's additional testing that I might look at. So for instance, I had a patient recently who did have your typical allergy type symptoms, and they just were really bad. And so I wondered, it made me wonder, like, are you having a histamine overload? She had done a low histamine diet in the past, and it had not made a tremendous difference for her. In some patients, it makes a real big difference. So, but in her case, it had not. And it was really difficult for her to implement. And so we ended up doing some further testing looking at histamine levels as well as DAO enzyme levels that actually break down the histamine in our gut, whether it's through food or other things. And so we found her histamine level was okay, but her DAO level was really low. So she was, even though she wasn't necessarily having this overload of histamines, because her body was not able to break it down the way that it should, she was having all these symptoms. So I think really it's very individualistic in looking at what could be causing that. Sometimes in some patients, they may have an overgrowth of certain bacteria in their gut, that there are bacteria that actually produce histamines. And so when you see overgrowth of some of those bacteria and you're able to actually treat that and kind of rebalance the gut microbiome, that can really help with histamine issues. So I really look at what could be going on that's causing this. Sometimes it's mast cell activation syndrome from some, other chronic infection. And so really having to take a multifaceted approach to how to control the histamines. So it really just depends on the situation.
Yeah, I heard you mention a couple of times the gut.
Yeah.
And I don't think that many people think about the gut when they think about inflammation.
Right.
But really, that can be the source and the driver of a lot of this. I know that you tested Millie's gut, and I found some really shocking things there.
Yeah.
So will you talk to us a little bit about the gut microbiome and what its relationship is with inflammation? Why should we be looking at it?
Yeah. And I'll say even yes to inflammation and that gut connection. And then the other thing too is immune function with the gut. And so I think both of those, the gut really affects a whole lot. So when I look at the gut, I look at the bacteria that are there, and I look at commensal bacteria, which is your good probiotic type bacteria. And those are so important for immune function, for the lining of your gut, and if it's in good shape, and even things like making neurotransmitters, breaking down foods, immune function, all of that. So we look at the good bacteria, we look at the bad bacteria, we look at bacteria that might be normal defined, but if it's overgrown, it can cause all kinds of issues, kind of like what we were talking about. Some of those are those histamine producers. Some of them produce specific toxins that can be bad for the body and cause inflammation. So looking at all of those things can be really helpful and insightful to know, okay, what do we do?
Right.
An anti-inflammatory diet is a huge component of that. But when you have an overgrowth of bacteria or you don't have enough of the good probiotic bacteria, then really needing to work on those things can be important. And then the other thing along with that is just looking at things that show the health of the lining of the gut. So if you have, we all have a permeable gut lining that should let some things through and should keep others out. And if you are having increased, what they call increased intestinal permeability, which is leaky gut, then you're letting things through that are getting into your bloodstream that should not be there. So that might be food that hasn't been fully digested and broken down. And you might create, your body might create an immune response to it. And so you might have an allergy or even a food sensitivity that develops because of that. It might be that it's letting certain germs or bacteria through, and you should first be attacking it in the gut with the lining of the gut, those secretory IgA cells that are kind of our first line of defense. And so if these things are getting through to our bloodstream before they're even attacked by the immune system, then we're mounting an immune response to them and more likely to get sick, more likely to have increased inflammation. So really looking at all of those things can be really helpful and insightful to see what is going on and what you need to do, like specifically to work on gut health, because it looks different in everybody.
Right. So let me ask you a question. When you see these patients with chronic disease, I mean, is gut one of the things you always look at? I mean, is that like a starting point when we're looking at inflammation?
I almost always look at that. There have been the rare patient that maybe I have not done a gut test, a stool study on, but I would say that's very rare. Especially in chronic disease. So take, for instance, somebody who has autoimmune. I would say in any autoimmune issue, there's always a gut component. And they found with research that there's always a degree of intestinal permeability of leaky gut in autoimmune. So I almost always look at the gut and what's going on there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, that's not one of the things, number one, I was ever taught in traditional medicine.
Yeah.
And I was never approached about that as a patient, right? I mean, it's something I've never discussed until getting into this world where you're kind of going outside of traditional medicine, looking at other things.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's no textbook really to figure all of this out. And so you're kind of relying on colleagues and, learning in your own research and doing all those things. I mean, it's challenging.
Yeah, it is. And I'll say it is so interesting to me because I think there's a ton more research now being done on the gut and the connection to overall health.
Yes.
So I'm really glad about that. And there's a lot more evidence to support that. But it's funny because when my son, who's now 17, when he was 4 and having a whole host of gut and allergy issues, we were seeing a GI doctor. And this was when I had first come upon the connection of gut health and allergies. And I asked, do you think that it could have anything to do with leaky gut? And he's like, no, that is not a thing. Well, fast forward, to now, and he had a follow-up with the GI doctor recently. And the GI doctor mentioned to me, they're finding a lot more evidence that the gut can play a role in immune health and in allergies. We really don't know what to do about it, but we know there is a connection. And I wanted to say there's so much that you can do about it. And there's we really do know what to do about it.
Right.
But I think a lot of times that traditional research is just slower to be accepted. But I would argue there's really a whole lot of evidence. I mean, it has been proven that leaky gut is a component of autoimmune. And so I think it is becoming a lot more accepted now, even in the traditional practices. So I'm really glad about that. It just takes a long time to really catch on.
For sure. And do you feel like patients are receptive to this idea when you start talking about getting a stool sample and testing their gut? And how does that relate to my inflammation and what's going on? I mean, do you find that they're receptive?
I feel like usually they are because they have exhausted other routes.
Yeah.
And they have not gotten improvement from what they've been doing. And they are wanting and desperate to look at other reasons as to what could be going on with them. So I think a lot of times they really do want to do some deeper digging to figure out what is going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have to agree. I mean, when we first talked about, testing stool, I'm like, great, no one's done that. Why not?
And it's crazy that all the information you get from it. Yes.
Yes. I had 3 boxes stacked up.
Yep.
One for me, my child, my husband, when everyone came home from school and work that day. It was fun.
Yes.
But it is very telling. I mean, and it's shocking what is living inside your gut. And then when you get it fixed, how much better you feel. But also, I didn't realize I felt so bad, right?
Yeah.
My body had just was compensating, I guess, for all of those things. But once you fix it, you feel so much better.
Yeah. And I think that's the case. We're living in this underlying, like, low simmering inflammation. It's not necessarily a raging boil, but it's just kind of under the surface, increased inflammation that just is simmering there. And you don't realize until you take it down that you're like, oh, I really did not feel well. And even I think for a lot of kids who maybe are living in that, who don't know any different and don't know what it feels like to feel good.
Right.
And adults too, after living with chronic inflammation for so long and chronic illness, forget what it feels like to feel better. And then when things change and they feel better, like, oh my gosh, I really did not feel well before.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And that's why I tell patients, okay, let's just try it for a couple of weeks. See how you feel. Eliminate some of these things and just see how you feel, and majority of them are feeling better.
Feel so much better.
And then they're like, let's do more, you know, and I think that's, super helpful. So when we're talking about inflammation, I mean, inflammation is a signal,
right?
It's not the problem, right? It's a signal coming from somewhere. How do you approach that with patients and trying to explain this? Because a lot of them, like you said, they just have been getting steroids and all these things. And I'm trying to unpack that idea and try to explain to them that this is the signal for something else. Right. And so how do you start that conversation with the patient about, root cause and where we're going to start?
Yeah. Well, and so I always try to say inflammation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like if you sprain your ankle, it's going to be inflamed, and that's a good thing because that's the way our body is healing it.
Right.
However, if it stays inflamed for years, that would not be good. And so I think that's what happens underlying is when we are staying in this chronically inflamed state, then it predisposes us to all sorts of other things, chronic illness, autoimmune, being, having a dysregulated immune system that's not functioning like it should. And so lowering overall inflammation can really make a big difference. Sometimes you can pinpoint exactly like a big driver of inflammation. So it might be chronic infection. It might be something like a Lyme disease, or it might be long COVID. But sometimes there's just multiple contributors. And so really addressing all of those things ends up helping overall. But yeah, I think we don't realize the inflammation that we're living with from our diet, from our lifestyle. It's just become the norm in our culture. But now we're seeing the results of it when we're seeing the rate of chronic illness increase so rapidly. I mean, I want to say it's between 1 in 3 and 1 in 2 kids now that have a chronic illness.
It's just crazy.
It is. It was not that way 20 years ago. When you look at the numbers and you see the rapid increase in that in the last 20 years, there's just no denying that, okay, something's got to be going on. And so much of it is things that are controllable from our lifestyle. So,
yeah, I mean, in thinking about like what kids are eating in the cafeteria, I mean, I'm just baffled, really.
Yeah.
But then I shouldn't be baffled at those numbers, right? Because it starts there in what we're exposing them to, and they have no other option. I mean, and even healthy choices. I keep going back to diet, but it's so important, it's so easy. It's such a simple thing that you absolutely can control. I mean, I just think about all the things we're feeding ourselves and our kids and all the things that I thought were healthy. They're definitely not.
Yeah. Same. I think about the things that I fed my oldest kids when they were little that I thought I was being healthy.
Yeah.
Like literally
Making
a
good
can
choices.
of mandarin oranges and syrup. And I'm
Yes.
like, well, they're getting fruit.
Yeah.
And now I look back and I cringe. But yeah, I think it really, I think about, there is a doctor, Dr. James Greenblatt, and he said, there's no such thing as junk food. There's either junk or there's food. And when you think about it that way, and you think about food is really, what's the purpose of it? It's to nourish our bodies, to fuel our bodies. But if a lot of what we're eating is actually doing the opposite of that, it's not nourishing, it's not fueling, it's actually causing inflammation and worse problems, like that's an issue. And even in the same sort of, picture, thinking of like, we put gasoline in a car because that's what fuels a car. If we were to put vinegar or water, it would break the engine. Like that would be crazy. So, and I think there's a balance. Like food is also supposed to be something that brings us together socially, where we can enjoy one another. And so figuring out that balance, and I think that looks different for different people.
Sure.
Some people have to be more restrictive because of either chronic illness or infection or genetics, and some have a little bit more resiliency. But overall, I think we need to be fueling our bodies and nourishing them. And the majority of the time, that's what, we should be taking in through food.
Sure. Something you said really resonates with me. It's something I've said to my patients too. I mean, a lot of my patients are dealing with mitochondrial dysfunction. And, that's the powerhouse, right? And we have to, I tell them, you have to think about fueling your body, not feeding it, right? Yeah. It's not just eating to be eating. We have to make sure that we're getting the right sources of energy. I mean, we've heard in our society, I think carbs are bad. Like no one eat carbs. Yeah. And, I have a lot of patients, including myself, I have difficulty with blood sugar regulation and mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic dysfunction. We need complex carbs.
Right.
And they're not bad for you.
Right.
I mean, but, in excess, it's the bag of potato chips carbs.
Right.
It's not the sweet potato carb that you're eating. So I think, you really have to have that conversation. Like we've got to fuel, not just eat, to be eating. And that's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And I think each person is different. So looking at individuals and what your body needs specific to you. And most people don't have to be so restrictive. And so you're right, like choosing good carbs, you do need carbs, and choosing good sources. Right. A sweet potato has fiber in it. Okay. So choosing carbohydrates that have fiber are great options. Yeah. So yeah, I think the other thing that we haven't talked about that I'll say too is protein. I think we do not get enough protein in our diet for the most part. And so it can be hard to figure out how to get enough protein in our diet. But that can be really important. Even with blood sugar regulation, like having enough protein is important too. So, but a lot of times our kids, if you think about what our kids or even us, what we are eating on a daily basis, breakfast typically for most people is a cereal or some sort of carbohydrate, a bread, a Pop-Tart, something like that. And then you go to lunch where you're either getting a school lunch or even if you're getting a sandwich and chips and, a bar or something. And then you go to dinner and maybe you get some vegetables at dinner and some meat and protein, but you've kind of gone through the day with very minimal protein and very minimal fiber. Yeah. And so just kind of shifting the way that we think and trying to incorporate all of those macronutrients, the protein, the fiber, the carbohydrates, and having healthy sources for all of them can be helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a different way of thinking, especially against everything we're taught in society right now. Don't eat a carb, all the things. But yeah, I have to unteach myself first, and then I have to kind of unteach my patients all the things that they've learned to try to get them, in a completely different mindset. And it's hard.
It is.
But when you're talking about inflammation, I mean, we're really trying to go at it from all aspects. I mean, there's many things, supplements and other things that we give, certainly, that we won't get into today. But, those are all things I think that augment. Where you can start is, what you put on and in your body.
Exactly.
And that is something they can cling while you're waiting
Right.
for all the, tests and all the things and waiting for, to get the supplements or whatever it is you're going to do. And that, like I said, I think it gives them some sense of control, or it did me. Like, I can control what's going in my body.
And a sense of responsibility.
Yes.
Like, I will tell people, you can't out supplement a bad diet.
Yes.
And so I could give you 10 supplements, but if you're not changing the way that you're eating, it may not really have much of an impact on it. Like, you've got to start with what you're putting in your body.
Exactly.
And a lot of times people still need supplements, but if they're able to start getting a lot of what the nutrition that they need through their body, a lot of times the supplements may be more short term.
Yeah.
And
less.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and supplements are expensive. Good food is expensive. And I tell people, I mean, it's basically investing in your health. So you're spending more money at the grocery store or on these supplements, but you're not spending as much money at the doctor's office.
Right.
I mean, we just had a well visit, for my child with a pediatrician. He said, I haven't seen you. And I said, I know.
Is that nice?
Don't jinx me.
Yeah.
Yes. But now we're eating better. We're doing better. And our immune system is better. Our gut is better. And that has made a difference. And so you save money here by investing it in your health. And that's hard.
And even long term, I tell people, I hope that we're able to start seeing changes in the symptoms you're having right now with these changes we're making. But also, this is a huge long-term game and goal of, like, if you're lowering inflammation right now, you are decreasing your risk for chronic illness and autoimmune later on. And so we're not only helping with what you're experiencing now, but we're really helping you in the future, or helping your child in the future to be less at risk for some of these things.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that, because patients will always say, okay, how long do I have to eat like this? Well, forever, right? You should have been eating. We all should have been eating like this, all along.
Right.
But however long you want to feel well, I don't know the answer to that. It has to be a lifestyle change. It cannot be for 2 months and then, move on with your life, go right back to it. I mean, that's not the way that works.
Yeah.
Well, so we've talked about personally, like as a mom, and as a wife, like how you kind of deal with, this, and being outside the box. But professionally, have you faced any challenges by kind of going against the grain and doing things not the traditional way?
Yes. And I would say, it's, I haven't necessarily had people that have come out and said they disagree with what I'm doing. I know that there are those people, and that's okay, because I feel like I might have been one of those people up until what I've walked through. So if I have that understanding of, like, you sometimes don't know until you experience certain things that there are other options and things that are helpful. So I would say yes in that regard. And then also, even as a mom, but advocating for my own children in the healthcare system, I've definitely experienced that. And it's been really discouraging and felt defeating. And even at times, I've felt a lot of anger for being dismissed or being looked at like I'm crazy. And that can be really hard. And when I think about certain instances, I start to feel misunderstood and angry with ways that I was treated, or my child was treated. And just really, I have to let that go, because I don't have control over what somebody else thinks. And I want to be able to help other people because of our experience, and to listen to other people and not dismiss what they're saying. So probably even more as a mom than professionally, I've felt that, but that may be coming more too. So who knows,
Well, you said something I think that's very important, is listening. And we've had that discussion a lot here, is just, people just want you to listen, right? And validate that they don't feel well, even though your test on your paper doesn't say anything. Right. And it's just taking the time to listen. And I think that is so important. And a lot of times that tells the story. I mean, they'll tell you what's wrong with them if you just listen.
And for somebody to be heard is huge. I think even for their health, like to know that they are heard and that you're understanding what they are saying and you're not dismissing it is a huge thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely did not have that experience of being listened to in the traditional healthcare system.
Yeah.
Not for myself, not for my child.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely what propels me forward, is to take that burden away from someone else.
Right.
If I can be that person that listens right off the, get-go where I was dismissed, then I want to do that.
Right.
And save them the anguish that comes along with it. Because it is very discouraging.
It is.
What would you say to a provider who maybe is in traditional medicine but doesn't feel like that aligns with their mission and the things that they want to do to help people? What would you say to them about trying to think outside the box or getting outside the box? Where do they even start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a lot of avenues and like possibilities of that, of what to do. I think probably one thing is finding a provider who's already in a more integrative space and being able to have a relationship with that person, ask questions. That person can be a resource. That's been a huge help to me, is because you're building on someone else's experience as well. You can read and do all the research, but when you actually are able to talk with somebody who has clinical experience with these things that you're reading about, it can be really insightful and helpful. So I would say trying to connect with somebody, even if there's not somebody locally. There's so many platforms to be able to, connect with somebody like-minded in the space that you're in and start to learn from them. And then I think also as you find certain people that you respect who are doing things in a more integrative way, looking them up to see if they've been on podcasts, if they've written books, who they mention have been mentors to them, and reading their work, their studies, and if they've published books and things like that. And I've learned a ton through other providers that I may not even necessarily have a professional relationship with, but I've listened to the things that they've said, whether it's at conferences or on podcasts. I've read their books, and I have been so grateful that as I have done that, and as I've had certain questions that arise in my practice, I've reached out to them just through email or calling their office. And I just thought, well, I have nothing to lose. I really want to find out what they would think about this. And maybe this is a shot in the dark. Maybe they'll respond. I have been amazed at the people who have responded and who have said, like, set up a phone call. I even just last week am about to start a new allergy treatment, and that not many people are doing. Nobody really in Alabama is doing it. And I was like, I need to talk to somebody doing this before I start. I want to hear their experience. There are some nuances with it. And I left a message at this office for this doctor who is in North Carolina and, in our integrative world would be considered very well known. I'm like, I probably will never hear back from her. She emailed me back that day. She's like, let's get on a call tomorrow. So I feel like there's so much willingness in this field to help other people who are wanting to get started. So I think if you just take one step, and whether it's through reading or listening to podcasts or reaching out to somebody, you'll be amazed at what you learn and also how much people want to help.
Yes. No, I agree. I think this world feels much more collaboratory than the one I was in, traditionally. I know we even have a group of wellness providers where we're like, hey, listen, I've got this situation. And it is very helpful, even if it's not applicable to me or my patient. I'm learning constantly, and something's mentioned, and then I'm looking it up, and then I'm looking for it in my patients. I'm looking for it in myself.
Yeah.
And that is the way that you learn. But I basically feel like I've had to unlearn everything I knew and try to relearn. Yeah. But I agree with you. I feel like people are much more willing to collaborate and to reach out and to help. So that's amazing. And so kind of switching gears a little bit, but along those same lines, what would you say to a patient who's been through traditional medicine and they're trying to get outside the box and they're trying to find their way to someone like you? What do you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, again, and this is from my own experience as a mom trying to do that with my child, like, take the next step that's in front of you. So it may be contacting a provider, or if you don't know of anybody locally who might be a resource to you, even seeing, do you know anybody that struggled with similar issues, and reach out to them and see where they've found help. But I think there's a lot of information out there, especially with social media. It's really hard to know what's good information and what's not. So finding a trusted provider, I think, can be really important. And I think you can do that in different ways. A lot of times through personal references and people you might know. Sometimes it's through a Google search, seeing what options there are out there, and then kind of trying to find out more about that person. Or even if you're considering going to see a provider, and, a lot of times more integrative providers are don't take insurance. And so it's a bigger financial investment. And so I think a lot of times even being willing to ask, like before you go see somebody, hey, do you have somebody reference that I could talk to a patient who's seen you, just to hear what it's like, or what their experience has been like. Like I've had several patients ask that, and I have patients who are more than happy to talk about their experience. And so I think those are just kind of good places to start.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I wanted to bring up. It's interesting because to see a wellness provider, an integrative provider, insurance doesn't cover it.
Right.
Which is crazy to me.
Right.
I mean, you're sick and you get it. It's backwards, right? We live in a sick healthcare environment, not a wellness environment.
Yeah.
So it is an investment, right? I mean, you're having to pay out of pocket for all of these things. And that is something patients need to know when they're seeking out integrative and, wellness providers, is that insurance is not going to cover it.
Right. And there's good and bad to that, right? So you're having to invest your own financial, but on the flip side, the person you're seeing is not being told what they can and can't do and what tests they can and can't order. And so there's a lot more freedom in what they can do a lot of times than maybe your traditional provider who's having to follow certain protocols.
Oh, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
You are not wrong. Yes.
And I think our culture is starting to want and accept that approach to healthcare more. But it definitely was a shift in the way that I thought. And as a mom who was having to pay out of pocket for care at different times, like I wanted to make sure that what we were doing was going to be a good investment of our money for our kids. So yeah, I think, having walked through that, I've realized like it was definitely a good investment and I would not change it. But you do have to kind of wrap your mind around that. It's different.
And then we recommend supplements, which are also not covered by insurance, right? Where you can go get a pill that's a pharmaceutical for free because your insurance covers it. And so, it is hard for patients to understand, I think, and wrap their head around it. It is a totally different mindset. But I think, talking to other patients who've definitely done that, I mean, that's helpful. And I would
for sure.
I would certainly say do that. And that's great that you have people. I am happy to speak on your behalf. Emily will speak on your behalf. She talks to everyone about you and all the fun things that we've done.
And not as fun things too.
Yes,
she's a trooper.
She was talking about all the powders and liquids, but we take pills now, and that's better.
Yes, that's funny.
But it is definitely a journey in talking about inflammation and functional medicine and versus traditional medicine. It is a journey. And a lot of us have walked that journey personally, which is how we get to where we are today. Yeah. But I think that makes us more empathetic.
For sure.
And I think it helps me say to my patients, yes, that is not fun, what you're going to have to do. But I've done it.
Yeah.
And I feel better.
It's doable. It's worth it.
Yeah, and it's worth it. And it is unfortunately a process.
Yeah.
It's not a steroid pack you're going to feel better today.
Yeah.
This is work, and you're going to have to put in the work, but it's not just a Medrol dose pack for 5 days.
Yeah.
This is decreasing inflammation for your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is, I mean, there's a lot of education, I think, that you have to do alongside of it, and a lot of conversation you have to have, but you have great rapport with your patients. And once they start to feel better,
Yeah.
And they'll do anything.
Yes. And they're
Yes.
so glad they did
Yes.
it. They don't look back and regret,
No.
giving up gluten or whatever it is,
Right.
because they feel so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else, Jen, like one takeaway that you could say about all the things or hope for the future for what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I would say a takeaway, I would just encourage people to start looking at slow changes that they can make to nutrition and what they're putting in their body. That's going to make a big difference, in how you feel now and later on. And even if there's parents, then starting to make those changes with your kids. A lot of times parents will say like, oh, my kid will not eat vegetables. And honestly, if you can make those changes now for your kids,
Right.
you are setting them up for such a better and more healthy adult life.
Yes.
Childhood is the time to start
Yes.
introducing those. And guess who's the one going to the grocery and buying the groceries?
Not
It is not the child.
right.
It is the parent. And so I guarantee if you start changing what you bring home, they will start becoming more open. You may be surprised, and it may take time, but they will get there. And so it's a great time to start, I would say, have hope, because there's so much you can do, and it's slow, and you're not going to get there overnight, but you're going to make a big difference in your kids' lives and in your life through that. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I am so excited to talk to you always.
yes, me too.
I learn something every time we text or
I
talk or
know.
see. I'm like blown away. And even in my own healthcare and my child's, there's so much to learn from each other, I think, and having these conversations and putting these conversations out there for people to know there are other options. There are other providers.
Yes.
There are other things that you can do that is not a pill that will help you with all these things, and inflammation being one of those things. So I just thank you so much for your time and coming on with us and sharing us with all your expertise. If someone wanted to see you, what would they do?
So probably the best way would be through my website, which is wellrooted, AL for Alabama.com, or even email Jenn with 2 N's at wellrootedal.com would be the best way to get in touch with me.
That's awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm sure people are going to be looking you up now for all the good things that you can get them set forward on their health journey.
Thank
you so much.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for listening in on this episode with Jenn, who's talking to us well outside of the constraints of traditional medicine, where people are not check boxes and things are challenging, and she's helping unpack those things to help people feel better and get on their healthcare journey every day. So thank you for tuning in on this episode of The Long Haul with Summer.